a writer, of putting in those hours, of spending that time, of building your voice as a writer, and to have conviction as a writer.
I believe you've referenced Dorothy Parker many times, where you say the famous remark of hers, "I hate to write, I love having written."
Yes.
I know we were talking a little bit about her off screen. How do you relate to that quote?
Well, absolutely relate to that quote. Writing is hard. It's tough for a couple of reasons. There's two sides of that coin. That the actual activity itself is taxing, and it requires a lot of patience, and also it is one of those chosen vocations where one is likely to suffer a great deal of critique, scrutiny, and attack. So all of that together makes it tough. So you have to sort of build a sort of thick skin. Now, with that comes the great myths of the writers, and all the writers that I can think of, and this is across all genres of writing. Most of them have this aura of strength and promotion of that strength as a writer and in their writing. And the finest examples of it is Dorothy Parker is probably one of the pinnacle of that idea of strength, as well as someone of course like Ernest Hemingway, Hunter S. Thompson, James Baldwin. All of these characters convey strength, and that is a quality that comes from having to deal with the rigors of being a writer, of putting in those hours, of spending that time, of building your voice as a writer, and to have conviction as a writer.
And it also speaks to something a little bit that we talked about just a few minutes ago, which was the character that you were referring to in Michael Clayton. Mm-hmm. And that is, they don't really fit in this box, they don't fit in that box. They kind of, there's not really a place for them, but they can't just fade away.
This is true. Mm-hmm. This is absolutely true. I think that's an interesting analogy and an interesting point that you're bringing up. I think that once you go down the road, I always get Thoreau and Emerson confused, but I believe it was Thoreau. The road not taken, so to speak. Once you go down the road not taken, a friend of mine used to say, it gets a little sketchy down there because the road not taken is often patrolled by the cops. So, once you go down that road, don't expect to not face adversity, and don't expect it to not change you. Don't expect it to not make you something that you don't expect that you're going to be. You will more than likely become smarter, wiser. You will have survival skills that you probably didn't expect that you would gain, but it will turn you into something else.
That's really interesting. For better or worse,
yeah.
I guess. Yeah. Right. I like what you said, how going down this road that's, there's not it's kind of a dark, murky road where you're not really sure what's in the shadows, but it also is maybe sort of a metaphor for what a lot of writers have been maybe more alone, or I know outcast is not the right word, but they're used to having to be their own strength.
Well, I mean,
Or is that a
yeah,
cliche?
to a degree. I mean, like, I know a lot of writers, and I've spent a lot of time around writers. This is a whole other subject matter. We can get into this in a bit. But being alone as a writer is not so bad, because writers aren't really alone. It's a kind of illusion, because writers are besieged with especially if they're writing stories, they're besieged with characters that live with them. So, and it's this misnomer to say a writer is alone. In fact, it's like writers in a sense, if you want to call them, antisocial, they aren't antisocial I think by nature. They're antisocial by choice, because they just want to get back to the people they know. or the people that they're currently entertained with. And I think that that's really what it is. I think also, conversely, many writers are extraordinarily gregarious. My personal MO, I think, is that I have two sides, and those two sides are: I can be incredibly quiet, totally bashful, really shy, a real introvert, and then I swing way to the other side, and I can be incredibly gregarious and an extrovert and highly social and and loud and boisterous and all those things. I don't know what that means, but I do know that is not something that is unusual. That many writers fill that mold.